I counted every jab because counting was the only thing that kept me from putting my hand around my son's wrist. 13 times. 13 sharp taps of his finger into my chest while the whole family watched him call me a parasite. The room went quiet after that, but not because they were shocked. It went quiet because most of them agreed with him. Before I tell you how my own son turned a family dinner into the night my name was dragged through the mud, welcome back to Revenge Acti Stories. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because this is one of those stories where the person everyone calls weak is the only one who knows where the truth is buried. My name is Walter Hayes. I was 63 years old when this happened, living in a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina. I had worked most of my life as a maintenance supervisor for a private hospital system. Nothing glamorous, no corner office, no fancy title. I knew how to fix boilers, keep generators alive during storms, patch pipes before they flooded a floor, and talk down angry administrators when the air conditioning quit in July. My wife, Marlene, used to say I had quiet hands. She meant I was the kind of man who fixed things without making a speech about it. We had 2 children. Our daughter, Bethany, was 36, a school counselor with a soft heart and a backbone she only showed when someone pushed too far. Our son, Preston, was 39, sharp-looking, sharp-tongued, and always dressed like he was about to be interviewed on television. Preston sold commercial real estate. At least, that was what he told people. He liked to say he moved properties. He liked to talk about markets, leverage, investors, and growth. Half the time I didn't understand what he was saying, but I understood enough to know that if a man has to keep reminding everyone how successful he is, something inside him is not resting easy. Marlene passed away 3 years before the dinner. Cancer, the kind that starts quietly, then changes the furniture in your house before you even realize it has moved in. For nearly 18 months, I drove her to chemo, changed sheets, cooked soup she barely touched, rubbed lotion into hands that had once braided Bethany's hair, and ironed Preston's school shirts. During that time, Preston came by maybe 4 times. He sent flowers twice. He paid for nothing, but he posted a picture of himself holding his mother's hand and wrote, "Family first." Marlene saw it and smiled sadly. "That boy wants to look good more than he wants to be good," she whispered. I never forgot that. After she died, I did what many widowers do. I became smaller. I ate standing over the sink. I left her coffee mug in the cabinet where she had always kept it. I watched old baseball games and pretended the silence was temporary, but I was not broke. That's important. I wasn't rich in the way Preston liked to pretend he was rich, but Marlene and I had been careful. We had paid off our house, we had savings, I had a pension. Years earlier, my older brother Leonard and I had bought a small strip of aging commercial buildings on the edge of town when nobody wanted them. Leonard died young, and his half eventually came to me after a long probate mess. By the time this story began, those old buildings were leased to a pharmacy, a dental office, a small accounting firm, and a bakery that had become popular enough to attract weekend lines. I didn't talk about it. Preston knew a little, but not everything. He had always dismissed those properties as Dad's rusty little rent boxes. He didn't know the land under them had become valuable after the county approved a new medical corridor. He also didn't know that I had already met with an attorney about setting up a family trust. That attorney's name was Caroline Mercer. Caroline had known Marlene before the cancer. She handled estate planning, property transfers, and the kind of documents nobody reads until a family starts showing its teeth. And my family was about to show every tooth it had. The first sign came 6 months after Marlene's funeral. Preston called me one evening and said, "Dad, you need to think about simplifying." I was sitting in my kitchen eating leftover chili. Simplifying what? Your life, the house, the properties, all that old stuff you're hanging on to. I looked toward the living room, where Marlene's reading chair still faced the window. "I'm not hanging on to stuff," I said. "I'm living in my home." He laughed like I had made a childish point. "A house that size for one old man doesn't make sense, one old man." I remember staring at the phone. He continued, "You should sell it. Move into something manageable, maybe one of those senior communities near Hendersonville. I can help you liquidate the properties too." "Liquidate," I repeated. "Dad, don't get emotional. This is what I do." That was the first mistake he made. He believed because he could say words like liquidate and restructure, I would forget who had paid the mortgage while he was still crashing his bicycle into mailbox posts. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't. After that, the little comments started showing up everywhere. At Bethany's daughter's birthday party, Preston told my cousin Elaine, "Dad still thinks rent checks are a business model." At Easter lunch, he joked that I brought store-brand pie because the pension must be tight. When I didn't buy the newest phone, he told his wife Denise, "Some people get stubborn about upgrading. It's a control issue." Denise laughed. Denise was a woman who smiled with only the front of her face. She had long blonde hair, bright nails, and a way of saying Walter that made my name sound like an old stain on a tablecloth. She and Preston had 2 sons, Camden and Brooks. Good boys, though Preston was working hard to teach them that respect belonged to people with expensive shoes. Bethany noticed the comments before I admitted they hurt. One afternoon, she came by with groceries I hadn't asked for and found me repairing a loose hinge on Marlene's pantry door. "Dad," she said carefully, "Preston told Aunt Elaine you've been asking him for money." I stopped turning the screwdriver. "What?" She looked sick even saying it. "He said you've been leaning on him since Mom died. He said he's trying to keep you afloat." I didn't answer right away, because for a moment, I heard Marlene's voice again. "That boy wants to look good more than he wants to be good. I've never asked Preston for money," I said. "I know. No, Beth, listen to me. Not once." "I know, Dad." Her eyes filled, and that hurt worse than Preston's lie. Because now my daughter had been forced to choose between believing her brother and defending me. I put the screwdriver down. "Who else did he tell?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me enough. The story had spread. Preston had made himself the successful son carrying his poor widowed father. It probably earned him sympathy. Maybe admiration. Maybe it helped him cover something else. I wish I could say I confronted him right then. I didn't. A younger man might have driven to his office and demanded answers. A louder man might have embarrassed him in return. But I had spent 40 years around machines. And machines teach you something people don't. When you hear a strange sound, you don't hit it with a hammer right away. You listen. You find where the sound begins. So I listened. Over the next few months, I watched Preston more closely. He asked too many questions about my properties. He wanted copies of lease agreements. He wanted to review my insurance policies. He asked whether I had updated my will after Marlene died. Then one day he came by with a folder, no warning. Just knocked once and walked in like my house was already half his. "Dad, I drew up a basic asset management proposal," he said. I was at the dining table sorting old photographs. Marlene at the beach. Marlene holding newborn Bethany. Marlene dancing with Preston at his wedding, her face full of hope. "What kind of proposal?" He sat down across from me and slid the folder over. "You sign limited authority to let me handle property negotiations. Nothing dramatic. Just gives me room to act fast if opportunities come up." I opened it. I may have been a maintenance man, but I was not stupid. The document used soft language, but the meaning was hard. If I signed it, Preston could negotiate sales, approve repairs, access financial records, and collect management fees. "Why would I need this?" I asked. "Because you're not getting younger." I looked at him. He didn't look away. "Preston," I said, "I've managed those leases for 22 years. "Yeah, and the world changed in 22 years. I closed the folder. "I'm not signing this." His jaw shifted. For 1 second, I saw the real emotion under his polished voice. Not concern, not disappointment, anger. Then he smiled again. "Okay," he said. "Think it over." He left the folder on my table. That night, I drove to Caroline Mercer's office. I brought the folder, my property records, and a small metal box Marlene had kept in the bedroom closet. Inside that box were old letters, receipts, insurance papers, and one yellow envelope with Marlene's handwriting on it. "Walter, open this when you are ready." I had never opened it. Grief makes cowards of good men sometimes. I was afraid it would smell like her perfume. I was afraid it would say something kind and undo me. Caroline looked through Preston's document first. Her face changed by the 3rd page. "Walter," she said, "do not sign this. I wasn't planning to. This gives him more control than he told you." That's what I thought. She tapped the papers. "Has he been pressuring you?" I told her everything. The comments, the lies, the calls. The questions about my will. Caroline leaned back and folded her hands. "Then we need to make sure your estate plan is clean, updated, and protected." I already have a will. Old wills are where family wars begin. She was right. Over the next month we updated everything. My will, the trust, the property ownership documents, medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, beneficiaries, everything. And then Caroline asked a question that made my stomach tighten. Walter, has Preston ever borrowed money from you formally? I laughed once. Not formally. How much informally? I looked out her window. There are numbers a father remembers even when he pretends he doesn't. 8,000 for a failed condo flip. 12,000 for temporary payroll when his office was struggling. 6,000 after Denise's credit cards got out of hand. 25,000 when he said he had a once-in-a-lifetime commercial deal that would change the family. I never told Marlene the full amount. She knew some, not all. About 51,000, I said. Carolyn's pen stopped. Any written proof? Texts, bank transfers, a few emails. Did he repay any of it? No. She nodded slowly. Gather everything. I did. That was when I found the second layer of the lie. Preston had not only told people he was supporting me, he had used that lie to explain why he was short on money. He told Denise's parents he had given me nearly 70 grand after Mom died. He told my brother-in-law I was draining him. He told Bethany I was too proud to admit how bad things were. It was clever in an ugly way. Every dollar he had borrowed from me became a dollar he claimed he had given me. And every time I stayed quiet, his story got stronger. But I still did not confront him, because Caroline found something else. 2 years earlier, without telling me, Preston had listed one of my commercial properties in a private investor packet as under family control with transfer expected. He had used projected sale numbers to secure interest from 2 investors, not a sale contract, not illegal by itself. Caroline said, but reckless, dishonest, dangerous. And if those investors believed Preston had authority he did not have, that could become a serious problem for him. Walter, Caroline told me, your son is building a ladder on your back. I sat there very still. That doesn't mean he'll climb it, she added. But I knew Preston. He had been climbing for years. Then came the invitation, a family dinner at Preston's house. Not a holiday. Not a birthday. Just a family alignment dinner. As Denise called it in the group text, family alignment. I almost didn't go. Bethany called me the morning of. Dad, please be careful tonight. Why? She sighed. Preston's been saying this is about getting everyone on the same page. What page? The future. Your future. I looked at Marlene's coffee mug in the cabinet. My future, I said. Dad, I'll be fine. Don't let him corner you. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Your brother has been trying to corner me since he learned to walk. That evening, I put on a navy sweater Marlene had bought me for our last Christmas together. I drove to Preston's house just after sunset. His place sat in a gated neighborhood with stone columns at the entrance and houses too big to feel lived in. Denise had decorated everything in whites and golds. White sofa, gold lamps, glass table, a room that looked afraid of fingerprints. The whole family was there, Bethany and her husband, Mark, Aunt Elaine, Marlene's brother Victor, and his wife Susan, Denise's parents, Warren and Patricia, a few cousins, even old family friends, including Ray Whitcomb, who had been my best man 41 years earlier. When I walked in, the conversation dipped. That is a sound you never forget. The sound of people stopping because you are the topic they were enjoying. Denise gave me a thin hug. Walter, you made it. Wouldn't miss family alignment, I said. Her smile twitched. Preston came down the hall wearing a charcoal blazer in his own living room. Dad, he said loudly. Good. We were waiting on you. I looked around, waiting on me. Not for me. On me. Dinner was stiff. Roast beef, glazed carrots, mashed potatoes, and silence dressed up as manners. Preston talked about market growth. Warren nodded like every sentence had stock value. Denise kept refilling wine glasses. I noticed nobody asked me much of anything. Bethany kept glancing at me. After dessert, Preston stood and tapped his spoon against a glass. All right, he said. Since everyone's here, I think we should talk openly. My fork rested beside a half-eaten slice of pecan pie. Here it comes, I thought. Preston walked to the end of the dining room where everyone could see him. Dad's at a stage where decisions need to be made before things become messy. Bethany immediately said, Preston. He lifted a hand. No, Beth. We've all been dancing around this. I sat back, the room blurred a little at the edges, not from fear, but from that strange calm you feel before a storm breaks. Preston continued. The house is too much for him. The properties are outdated. The paperwork is a disaster. And frankly, he has been leaning on me financially more than most of you know. Bethany stood halfway. That is not true. Preston pointed at her. You don't know everything. I know, Dad, she said. He laughed. You know the version Dad shows you. I felt every eye turn toward me. Ray Whitcomb frowned. Aunt Elaine looked down at her napkin. Victor shifted in his chair but said nothing. Preston walked toward me. Dad, I'm saying this because somebody has to. You need help. I have help, I said quietly. No, you have pride. That too. A few people looked uncomfortable. Preston's face hardened. Don't joke, he snapped. This is serious. It is serious. Then admit it. Admit what? He stepped closer. That you can't manage your life anymore. Bethany said, stop. But Preston was past stopping. He leaned over me. And with the first jab of his finger into my chest, he said, you have drained this family long enough, one. I looked down at his finger, then back at his face. You sit there acting noble, he said, jabbing again, while everyone else carries your weight. 2. Preston, Denise said softly, though not strongly enough to stop him. You hide behind Mom's death. 3. That one landed deeper than the finger. You use grief like a shield. 4. You use age like an excuse. 5. You use Bethany's sympathy. 6. Everyone tiptoes around you. 7. You think being quiet makes you wise. 8. It doesn't. 9. It makes you manipulative. 10. The room had gone completely still. He jabbed again. You are not a victim. 11. Agan. You are not some family hero. 12. Then he pressed his finger hard against my sternum and said the line that ended my old life. Dad is a parasite. 13. Nobody breathed. Not one person told him to apologize. Not Warren, not Patricia, not Victor, not Aunt Elaine, not even Ray, though his face had gone red with shame. Bethany was crying now, one hand over her mouth. I slowly stood. Preston took half a step back, like he suddenly remembered I was still 6 feet tall. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch him. I didn't even insult him. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair and said, you should have stopped at 12. He blinked. What? I looked around that room. At the people who had eaten my food, borrowed my tools, accepted my help, attended my wife's funeral, smiled in my face, and then sat quietly while my son called me a parasite. You all have a good evening, I said. Then I walked out. Bethany followed me into the driveway. Dad, please, don't drive upset. I'm not upset, you're shaking. I looked down. She was right, my hands were trembling. She hugged me like she was trying to hold the broken parts together. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I kissed the top of her head. You didn't do it. I should have stopped him. No, I said. He needed witnesses. She pulled back, confused. I opened my car door. Go home, sweetheart. Dad, what are you going to do? I looked at the bright windows of Preston's house. For years, I had given my son chances to become better in private. Now he had chosen public, so public was what he would get. But not tonight. That was another thing machines teach you. Heat makes metal soft. You don't shape anything properly while it is exploding. I drove home in silence. When I got there, I took off the navy sweater and folded it carefully. Then I finally opened Marlene's yellow envelope. Her handwriting hit me first. Dear Walter, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are probably pretending you are doing better than you are. I laughed through my nose and cried before I finished the first paragraph. Most of the letter was love, the kind that feels like a hand on your shoulder from another world. But near the end, Marlene wrote something that made me sit straighter. Please don't let Preston turn your guilt into his inheritance. I love our son, but I saw what you tried not to see. He mistakes kindness for weakness. Protect yourself. Protect Bethany. And remember, you do not owe anyone the right to destroy what we built together. Inside the envelope was a smaller folded page, a list, dates and amounts. Money I had given Preston. Marlene had known more than I thought. At the bottom she wrote, if he ever lies about you, show them the truth. I placed the letter on the table and sat with it until midnight. Then I called Caroline. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. Walter? Are you all right? No, I said. But I'm ready. The next morning I sent Caroline every text, email, transfer record, and document I had. She already had most of the estate papers. I added Marlene's list. I added Preston's asset management proposal. I added screenshots. Bethany sent me from family messages where Preston claimed he had been supporting me. Then Caroline did what good attorneys do. She organized truth into a language people could not ignore. First, she sent Preston a formal letter. Not emotional, not dramatic, just clean and cold. It stated that he had no authority to represent, manage, market, transfer, negotiate, or imply future control over any property owned by me or the Hayes Family Trust. It demanded that he cease making false statements regarding financial support. It requested written clarification of any investor communications where he may have referenced my properties. And it included a repayment schedule for personal loans totaling $53,400. The extra amount came from records I had forgotten. I received a call from Preston 42 minutes after the letter reached his email. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, then Denise, then Preston again, then Warren, then Aunt Elaine. By noon, my phone looked like a scoreboard. I listened to Preston's first message. "Dad, what the hell is this? You got a lawyer involved? Are you serious right now? Call me." Second message. "You're embarrassing yourself. This is exactly what I mean about you being unstable." Third. "Those were gifts. You can't suddenly call them loans because your feelings got hurt." Fourth. "Dad, call me before this becomes a problem." I saved every voicemail. Carolyn loved voicemail. "People confess beautifully when they think they're just venting," she said. For 2 days, I didn't respond. On the third day, Bethany came over with soup and a worried face. "Preston is telling everyone you're having some kind of breakdown." "I'm sure he is. He said you're trying to extort him." I stirred the soup slowly. "That's a big word for paying back money you borrowed." She sat across from me. "Dad, there's more." I looked up. She swallowed. "Denise told Aunt Elaine that they may need to petition for control if you keep acting irrationally." I stared at her control. There it was. Not concern. Not support control. For a moment, something cold moved through me. Preston was not just trying to shame me into selling. He was building a case that I was incompetent, a grieving, unstable, financially dependent old man who needed his successful son to step in. If I had yelled at that dinner, he would have used it. If I had shoved him when he jabbed me, he would have used it. If I had signed that proposal, he would have used it. I looked at Bethany and said, "Do you trust me?" "With everything." "Then I need you to do something hard." "What?" "Stay quiet." She didn't like that, but she did it. A week later, Preston made his next move. He invited the family to a mediation meeting at his office conference room. He said he wanted to resolve misunderstandings before lawyers made things worse. Caroline told me not to go alone, so I didn't. I walked into Preston's glass-walled office the following Thursday at 10 a.m. Wearing a gray suit I had bought for Marlene's funeral, Carolyn walked beside me in a dark green blazer, carrying a leather folder. Preston was already there with Denise, Warren, Patricia, Aunt Elaine, Victor, and Susan. Bethany came too, sitting quietly near the end of the table. Ray Whitcomb sat in the corner, looking like a man who hadn't slept well since the dinner. Preston looked at Caroline and forced a smile. "I thought this was a family meeting." Caroline sat down. "Then it should be easy to resolve." Denise folded her arms. "Walter, this is unnecessary." I looked at her. "So was calling me a parasite." Her face tightened. Preston leaned forward. "I apologized for that privately." "No, you didn't," Bethany said. Everyone looked at her. Preston glared. "Stay out of this." Caroline opened her folder. "Let's begin with facts." Preston laughed. "Of course, here we go." Caroline placed a document on the table. Fact 1. Walter Hayes has not received financial support from Preston Hayes. Bank records show the opposite. She slid copies down the table. Nobody touched them at first. Then Victor picked one up. His eyebrows moved. Caroline continued. Between March 2021 and August 2025, Walter transferred funds to Preston or Preston's business accounts, totaling $53,400. Aunt Elaine whispered, "Preston?" He shook his head. "Those were family gifts," I said quietly. "You called them temporary help." Preston turned on me. "Dad, don't twist this." Caroline slid another page forward. Text message from Preston Hayes, June 14, 2022. "Dad, I swear I'll pay it back after closing. I just need payroll covered until Friday." Silence. Another page. Text message from Preston Hayes, November 3, 2023. "Please don't tell Denise. I'll repay you before Christmas." Denise's head snapped toward him. "Preston?" He held up a hand. That was taken out of context. Caroline looked almost bored. "I have 27 more." Warren shifted in his chair. The same man who had nodded proudly through Preston's dinner speech now looked like he wanted to disappear inside his collar. Caroline placed another set of documents down. Fact 2. Preston Hayes circulated an investor packet implying future control of assets he does not own. Preston's face changed. That was the first time I saw fear, not embarrassment, fear. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Carolyn smiled politely. "From one of the investors who became concerned after my letter." Denise whispered, "What investor?" Preston ignored her. Carolyn continued, The packet references the Meriton Road properties as part of an anticipated redevelopment strategy under family control. Victor looked at me. Meriton Road? Walter, those are yours. Yes, Preston said quickly. Family assets. No, Caroline said. Walter's assets. He pointed at me. Not jabbing this time. From across the table. You were going to leave them to us anyway. The room went even quieter. Caroline turned a page. Fact 3. Walter's estate plan has been updated. No one in this room has authority over his finances, medical decisions, properties, or trust except the individuals named in the documents. Denise looked at Bethany. Bethany looked down. Preston saw it. His mouth opened slightly. You made Beth your executor? I didn't answer. Caroline did. Bethany Morris is successor trustee. She also holds durable power of attorney if needed. Not Preston. Preston pushed back from the table. Unbelievable. I finally spoke. No, son. What's unbelievable is jabbing your finger into your father's chest 13 times and thinking paperwork would never answer. His face flushed. Aunt Elaine started crying softly. Ray Whitcomb leaned forward, elbows on knees, and said, Preston, you told me your dad was bleeding, you dry. Preston snapped. I was trying to protect the family, from Ray asked. The truth, Preston stood. This is a setup. Caroline closed the folder halfway. No, Mr. Hayes. A setup is telling relatives your father is dependent on you while borrowing from him. A setup is implying control over property you don't own. This is documentation. Denise's voice shook. Preston, did you use his properties to get investors? He looked at her with irritation, like her question was rude because it was inconvenient. I was building something. With Dad's name? Bethany asked. For the family, he said. That phrase finally made me tired. For the family. People say that when they want your sacrifice and their benefit to sound like the same thing. I stood slowly. Preston, I came here to say 3 things. He folded his arms. First, you will stop telling people I depend on you financially. His jaw clenched. Second, you will send Caroline a written list of every person or investor you contacted using my properties in any way. He scoffed. And third? I looked at him for a long moment. Third, you are removed from my will. Denise gasped. Aunt Elaine whispered my name. Preston stared at me like I had slapped him. You can't do that, I almost smiled. That's the thing about a will, I can. You're punishing my children. No. Camden and Brooks are protected through an education trust. They didn't jab me in the chest. Denise looked up sharply. That part she hadn't expected. Preston's voice dropped. Dad. There it was. Not apology. Calculation. Don't, I said. His eyes flicked around the room. He needed witnesses again. But now the witnesses were watching him bleed truth. After everything I've done for you, he said. I nodded slowly. That line might have worked last month. Caroline handed him one final document. This is a repayment agreement. You may review it with your own attorney. If you refuse to address the debt, we will proceed accordingly. He didn't take it, so Caroline placed it on the table. I turned to leave. That was when Denise spoke. Walter. I stopped. Her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. Did Marlene know? I looked at her. Yes, Denise swallowed. About the money? Yes. And the will? No. The new one came after. Then I said the one thing I had not planned to say. But she left me a letter warning me not to let guilt become Preston's inheritance. Denise put a hand over her mouth. Preston looked furious. You're bringing Mom into this? I stepped toward him. Just one step. You brought her into it. When you said I used her death as a shield, he looked away first. I walked out of that office with Caroline beside me and Bethany behind me. Outside, in the parking lot, I took my first full breath in weeks. Caroline asked, How do you feel? I thought about it. Not good, I said. But clean. She nodded. Clean is a start. What happened after that did not happen all at once. That's something revenge stories don't always tell you. Truth may arrive in one dramatic moment, but consequences take their time. Preston hired an attorney. His attorney contacted Caroline. The tone changed quickly once documents were shared. Within 2 months, Preston signed a repayment agreement. Not because he became honorable overnight. Because his lawyer likely explained that text messages, bank records, investor packets, and voicemail threats did not make him look like the hero of the story. He agreed to repay the money over 5 years, with interest, low enough that no one could call me cruel, but formal enough that no one could call it a gift. He also sent letters to the 2 investors clarifying that he had no control over my properties. One investor backed out of his project, then the second did. Preston's big redevelopment deal collapsed quietly, Not with sirens, not with shouting, just emails, delays, and doors closing. Denise called me once. I almost didn't answer. When I did, she cried for a long time before speaking clearly. I didn't know, she said. I believe you didn't know everything. That was the most generous truth I could offer. She said Preston had told her the money went the other direction. He had told her he was helping me, covering my bills, managing my problems. She had repeated things she had not verified because the version made her husband look strong. I'm sorry, she said. I accepted the apology, but I did not invite her over for coffee. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Aunt Elaine wrote me a letter by hand. 3 pages. She apologized for staying silent at the dinner. She admitted she believed Preston because he sounded confident, and I never defended myself. That line bothered me for days, because it was true. Sometimes quiet people are punished simply because liars speak louder. Victor came by with a box of peaches from a roadside stand, which was his way of apologizing without drowning in words. Ray Whitcomb did better. He knocked on my door one Saturday morning, eyes wet before I even opened the screen. Walt, he said. I was a coward. I let him in. He sat at my kitchen table where Marlene used to drink coffee and told me he had wanted to speak up but froze. He said when Preston called me a parasite, he saw my face and knew he had failed me. I've known you 45 years, Ray said. I should have stood up. I poured him coffee. Then stand up now, I said. He did. From that day on, whenever someone repeated Preston's story, Ray corrected it, calmly, publicly, without drama. Bethany remained my steady one. She never gloated, never said, I told you so. She just came over on Sundays, helped me organize the garage, brought the kids, and filled the house with ordinary noise again. One afternoon, my granddaughter Lila found Marlene's old gardening hat and wore it while eating cookies. I had to step outside for a minute. Grief comes back in strange costumes. As for Preston, he stayed away, 3 months, then 4. Then one evening near Thanksgiving, he pulled into my driveway. I saw him through the kitchen window. He looked thinner, less polished. No blazer, just jeans, a coat, and the face of a man who had discovered mirrors do not negotiate. I opened the door but did not invite him in. Dad, he said. Preston. He looked past me into the house, maybe expecting memory to soften me. I wanted to talk. We're talking. He swallowed. I was angry. I waited. I felt like you never respected what I was trying to build. That almost made me close the door, but I stayed. He continued. I know I said things I shouldn't have. I looked at him. He exhaled. I shouldn't have called you that. No. And I shouldn't have touched you. No. His eyes reddened, but I did not know if it was shame or frustration. I'm sorry, he said. It was the first clean apology I had heard from him. But clean does not mean complete. Why did you do it? I asked. He looked down. For once he didn't answer quickly. I was drowning, he said. In debt, he nodded. How much? More than Denise knew. More than I knew. He gave a small, bitter laugh. Yeah, there it was. Not the whole truth, maybe, but a piece of it. I thought if I could get one big deal closed, everything would straighten out, he said. The properties made it look possible. My properties. He nodded. Your properties. The words seemed painful for him. I convinced myself it would be fine because one day it would all be family anyway. That thinking is how thieves tuck themselves into bed. He flinched good. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because truth should land somewhere. He wiped his face with one hand. Can we fix this? I looked over my shoulder at the warm light inside my house, at the photographs on the wall, at the chair Marlene once sat in, at the quiet life he had tried to turn into a weakness. We can build something new, I said. But we are not fixing the old thing. The old thing broke when you put your finger on me. His mouth trembled, I continued. You'll keep making payments. You'll stop lying. You'll apologize to Bethany. You'll tell Denise the whole financial truth. And you'll never again speak about my age, my grief, or my money like they belong to you. He nodded. And Preston? He looked at me. If you ever try to use my grandchildren as leverage, that door closes for good. I won't. I hope not. He stood there a moment longer, then he said, Can I hug you? That question hurt more than I expected, because he was still my son. Not a stranger, not a villain in a movie. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy Marlene held when he had fever. The man who had humiliated me, because somewhere along the way ambition had eaten his gratitude. I stepped onto the porch. I let him hug me, but I did not pretend it erased anything. Some viewers may not understand that. They may think forgiveness means going back to how things were. It doesn't. Sometimes forgiveness means you stop carrying the fire, but you still remember where the burn came from. The next Thanksgiving, I did not go to Preston's house. I hosted dinner at mine. Bethany came with Mark and the kids. Ray came. Victor and Susan came. Aunt Elaine came early and helped set the table with Marlene's blue plates. Preston arrived last with Denise and the boys. He paused in the doorway like a guest who knew he had not earned his place yet. That was exactly what he was. A guest, not the owner of the room, not the manager of my future, not the spokesman of the family. Just a son trying to learn how to stand where respect was required. Dinner was peaceful. A little careful, but peaceful. At one point, Camden asked me about the old toolbox in the hallway. "Grandpa, why do you keep that rusty thing?" Preston started to answer, then stopped himself. I noticed, small thing. Important thing, I told Camden, because your grandma bought it for me when I got my first supervisor job. She said every man needs somewhere to keep the tools that keep the house standing. Leela said, even rusty tools, especially rusty tools, I said. New tools look pretty. Old tools know where the problems hide. Ray smiled into his coffee. Preston looked down at his plate. After dinner, while everyone moved around the kitchen, Preston came beside me near the sink. I told Denise everything, he said quietly. I nodded. And Beth, I know. She said it'll take time. She's right. He dried a plate slowly. I found a counselor. That surprised me. I looked at him. For the debt stuff, he said, and other stuff. That was as close as Preston had ever come to admitting the problem was not only numbers. Good, I said. He nodded. We washed dishes in silence for a few minutes. It was not a movie ending. No swelling music. No full family healing in one scene. Just warm water, old plates, and two men standing beside damage they could not deny. But it was something. Months later, Caroline finalized the education trust for my grandsons and granddaughter. Bethany remained successor trustee. Preston remained out of the will for direct inheritance. That was not revenge anymore. That was wisdom. The properties stayed mine. Eventually, I sold one small parcel to the county for the medical road expansion. The money went partly into the trust, partly into my retirement, and partly into a scholarship fund at the hospital for maintenance workers' children. I named it after Marlene. Preston found out at the public announcement. He stood in the back of the room while the hospital director talked about Marlene's kindness, about working families, about dignity in jobs people rarely notice. Afterward, Preston approached me. You didn't tell me, he said. No. Why? Because not everything I build needs your approval. He accepted that. A year earlier, he would have argued progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is just the absence of arrogance, the line. Dad is a parasite, never fully left me. I still hear it sometimes when the house is quiet. But now, when I hear it, I also remember what came after. I remember standing up. I remember the folder opening. I remember truth sliding across a conference table while every lie lost its color. I remember my wife's letter. I remember that I did not have to shout to be strong. My son jabbed his finger into my chest 13 times in front of the entire family and called me a parasite. But the 14th touch was different. It was my own hand, months later, resting over that same spot on my chest as I stood in my kitchen and realized I had survived the insult without becoming the kind of man who gave it. That matters, because revenge, real revenge, is not always destruction. Sometimes it is documentation. Sometimes it is boundaries. Sometimes it is letting the people who laughed at you sit quietly while the receipts speak in complete sentences. And sometimes it is changing your will, locking your doors, protecting your peace, and still leaving room for a broken son to become better without handing him the keys to destroy you again. So tell me honestly, how did this story make you feel? If your own child humiliated you in front of the whole family, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Would you give them one more chance if they apologized? Or would that one sentence be enough to close the door? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if stories like this remind you that quiet people are not weak, subscribe to Revenge Act T Stories. Because sometimes the man everyone underestimates is not empty-handed. Sometimes he is holding every document, every message, every truth, and the patience to wait until the whole family is watching.